Hi, my name is Kristina. Thank you all for joining me today. We've been talking about walking and different ways to increase your endurance as you're walking and your strength and your hip muscles. So we're going to keep talking about that today. Our first video, we talked about shoe wear. So if you missed that one, go back and watch that. There's some good tips about what types of shoes you should be wearing for walking. And then our second class, we talked a lot about hip strength and why that's important. So today, I just wanted to briefly talk about pain. I get asked a lot in the clinic, if walking is painful, should I do it? Whether that's back pain, knee pain, hip pain, foot pain, whatever pain you're having. And the answer really is, it kind of depends. Unfortunately, it's not a cold cut answer for everybody, but typically pain is the body's way of telling you that something is wrong. That something is going on that you need to pay attention to. And so if walking is painful, whether it be your back or your knees or whatever, then I would encourage you to modify it. And there's some different ways that you can do that. You can slow your speed or your distance. That's an easy way to reduce the amount of time you're spending compressing those joints. Another good way to relieve that pain is to walk in the pool. The pool takes away gravity, and it allows your joints to have a little bit more freedom of movement. And so a lot of people who have back or knee pain hop into the pool and do walking forward and back, side to side, and that reduces a lot of pain as well. Another thing you could try is walking on grass or a turf, like a track at a high school or something, and that often helps versus walking on concrete. So I just wanted to touch on that a little bit because I know that's an issue for a lot of people with walking. So we're going to move on to exercises today. Brett's going to help me out again. And today we're going to use a TheraBand. If you haven't ever seen one of these, this is a resistance band. It comes in a variety of colors, and the colors symbolize the amount of resistance. So this is a fairly light resistance. We start at yellow, we go to red and green. So this is the third one up, and then from there it continues. So these you can find at any sporting goods store. You can find them on Amazon. It's a really easy way to progress your exercises without adding weight. Resistance is just a good way to do that. So Brett, go ahead and put this resistance band on. We're going to start, if you have one of these bands, feel free to grab it. We're going to start with the band above the knees, and I'm going to move out of the frame here so Brett can get in the middle. So go ahead and turn to the side, Brett. Yep, so we're gonna start with that band around the knees. And before we even start, I've had a little bit of feedback that patients are feeling more of the quadricep muscle versus the glutes with the squatting and other exercises that we're doing. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about how to activate those glutes. Sometimes it's more of a neuromuscular, we call it, exercise. So that basically means you need your brain to tell your muscle to turn on. And so the way we're going to do that before we start with anything today is called a glute squeeze, which is kind of a funny name. But all Brett's going to do is squeeze his bottom as tight as he can and then relax. I know, it's kind of funny. It's a funny exercise, but you can do it in any position. You can do it in sitting, in standing. You can do it lying on your back. All it does is activate those muscles. It's your brain turning them on so that when we go to use them, when we do our squatting, that they'll activate a little bit stronger. So do that for about 10 repetitions. You can hold it for about 10 seconds, and that's good there. So this is just more so of a warm-up exercise than anything else. All right, so after we get about 10 of those, we're gonna move to the squats. So I'm gonna move this chair in front of Brett. This helps with a little bit of balance. So what Brett is gonna do here is he's gonna go ahead, can we tilt the camera down a little bit? All right, so his toes are pointed straight ahead, and what he's gonna do is go ahead and squat down with that band and come back up nice and slow. So he's putting a little resistance on that band with his knees to the outside. So his knees are staying right over his toes as he squats down. So he's gonna feel his hip muscles activate a little bit more here with the band on than he would without the band on. Good, so go ahead and keep going. So what I want you to do is when you squat down, I want you to hold it. Hold it right there. You're gonna squeeze your glute muscles just like you did in standing and then come all the way back up. Yeah, let's do 5 more of those, nice and slow. So go ahead and squeeze the glutes a little bit slower. Hold right there, squeeze the glutes all the way up. Good, 3 more. Good. So this takes a little bit of practice. The brain really has to kick on these glute muscles because most of us are what we call quad dominant. So we're gonna feel it more in our quad muscles naturally because that's the muscle that's stronger. But we really want our glutes to be stronger. So that's what we're working on here today. Good. Let's do one more. Very good. Okay. So go ahead and turn and face the camera, Brett. So we're going to do some lateral steps. And since our camera angle isn't huge today,
mini chocolate extreme, 2 large diet pops, and
okay, so we're just going to step side to side. Let me get out of your way, Brett. So go ahead and step to the left and back and forth. So you can do this without the resistance band as well. You don't have to have a band, but the band is just going to kick on those hip muscles a little bit more. So Brett's just going to step side to side, and we're going to go for a couple minutes. Now, if you have the space, you can continue walking to the right for maybe 5 or 6 feet, and then back to the left 5 or 6 feet. But for the sake of the camera today, we're just going to stay right here, side to side. So you really want to feel those hip muscles working on the side. That's our goal. Good. So you can have the band above the knee or above the ankle. Above the knee is a little bit easier. It tends to be a little easier than above the ankle. Good. The other thing you can do, if this is pretty easy for you, I want you to get a little bit of a squat. So go ahead and bend your knees, Brett. So he's in a little bit of a mini squat, and now he's going to do the same thing, step side to side. That's going to activate the glutes a little bit more. And you may feel it in your quad muscles, so I want you to really think about squeezing your glute tight. And the other thing I want to point out is his feet. His toes are pointed straight ahead, which is really important to get the right muscles going. Very good. And take a break. Very good. Okay, so now we're going to move that band down to the ankles. Very good. All right, and Brett's going to do a similar step, but instead of going directly to the side, he's going to go a little bit behind him. So go ahead and show them that one. Yep, and then back forward. So a little bit more of a knee bend for this one. And then go ahead and step back. And I'll have you alternate side to side, so you'll switch sides. Yes. So you'll notice his toes are pointed out just a little bit as he steps back, but his hips are still pointed forwards. So if you see his hands, I want you to pretend that's a car's headlights. And those headlights need to be pointed straight towards the camera the whole time. So he's not turning his hips out to the side. Can you turn your hip just to show him what that looks like? Yeah, that's turning the hip out to the side. That's not what we want. We're not going to use the right muscles for that one. So you want to keep your hips pointed straight ahead, and the leg just goes out back and to the side. Now, you don't have to turn your toes out like Brett's doing here. If you have some hip tightness, your toes may not want to turn out without your hips turning out. So if that's the case, just keep your toes pointed straight forward, but still the same step back and out to the side. So you should feel your glute muscles kicking in with this one. Now let's try it with a little bit more of a squat. So go ahead and squat and spread your feet out a little bit more, Brett. And go into a squat. Good. And the lower you squat, the more your muscles are going to have to work for this one. One more. Good, and take a break. Very good. Okay, let's go ahead and leave that band around the ankles. I'm going to bring this chair back in the frame. I'm going to have Brett turn and face the chair. Good. Now for these ones, we're going to work those hip muscles again into extension. So he's going to take one foot and kick it behind him. Let's do the hip extension with the straight leg. Yep. Straight back. For this exercise, the leg's going straight back and in. Now, we did this one last time. It was one of our new exercises. And one thing I talked about was the spine. You want to keep your abdominals tight and your spine in neutral. So go ahead and show them what it would look like if you did a big bend at that back. Yeah. So that trunk comes forward. That's one way a lot of people try and compensate with hip stiffness. If the hip doesn't want to go back, they'll bring their trunk forward. So you don't want that. You want your trunk straight up and down. Just the hip is going behind you. And it doesn't have to be very much motion at all. It can be small. I'd rather have good positioning and small movements than you get a lot of movement at your back. So if this does bother your back, just move smaller increments, really, really small movements. It's probably bothering your back because you're getting so much movement at the spine. Good, let's go ahead and switch legs. So same thing on that other leg, and again, the band just adds a little bit more of a challenge, but you don't have to do these with the band. I just wanted to show you what it would look like to up that resistance a little bit. Very good. Let's do one more on that side. Very good. Now same thing, but instead of going straight back with the foot, Brett's gonna take it out to the side a little bit. Good. Now for this one, you'll notice his toes are coming out to the side a little bit as well. So they're not pointed directly forward, they're going out to the side. And that just helps him turn on his hip muscles. Good. Let's do about 3 more of these. So same thing for this one, like we talked about with the step back, is that you want your hip pointed straight ahead, like a headlight for a car. You don't want your hip turning out to the side. Go ahead and show them what it looks like. That's a turn out to the side. That's what we don't want. You don't want your hip opening up like that. You want it staying straight forward. Good. All right, let's switch sides. Same thing on the other side. Two more. Good, take a break. Great. Okay, for the next one, we're going to do some calf raises. We've done these the last couple times. Let's go ahead and leave the band there for now. So you can turn towards the chair and let's just do calf raises up and down on the toes. So this exercise is really important for walking and running, especially. If you've ever heard of shin splints, this is an exercise that helps with that. A lot of times when we walk, you know, our toes come up so that we can clear the ground as we step forward. And sometimes those muscles in the front of the shin become a little overactivated. And so this muscle, the calf, helps to balance that out, which is why calf raises are important. So this is a nice, easy one. You can do it in the kitchen when you're cooking or anytime really. Brushing your teeth, you can do calf raises. Don't do it in the shower, that's dangerous. Okay, a couple more of these. Very good. One more. Good. Take a break. All right, the next one we're going to move to is called a fire hydrant. So, Brett, let's move that band up above the knee. This was a new one that we added last time, too. And this is also for the hip muscle. Now, you may feel the hip muscle on either side for this one. But what Brett's going to do, let's start with this leg. He's going to bend that knee, and he's going to move the whole knee and foot back out and in. So for this one, it's really important to keep the foot right behind the knee. This is a great one to do in front of the mirror, if you have a mirror, because you don't want to be able to see your foot in the mirror. It should be directly behind the knee. And Brett wants to keep his hips level so that he's not hiking this hip up. Go ahead and show him what that's a hip hike. And that's not what we want. So we want to keep the hips level and just move the leg. Good, let's go ahead and switch sides. Try the other side. Same thing on this side. Couple more. Good, and relax. Very good. Okay, Brett, you can go ahead and take that band off. So if the resistance band isn't something you've ever tried before, I would recommend trying one. They're really great to increase strength for sure at home on your own. Okay, let's move on to some stretching. We're gonna go ahead and do a hip flexor stretch. So we've done this one a couple times. There's different ways that you can stretch this muscle, but this is an easy way to do at home. So find a chair that doesn't roll, or you can use a stool or a bench or anything like that. You want something stationary. You can do this on the bed too if your bed is low enough. Yeah, a couch will work well. And all he's gonna do is put one foot on the chair and lean forward. Now, I don't care so much about his heel behind him. He can bring that heel up off the ground and go up onto his toe. Go ahead and do that. That's perfectly fine because what he's stretching is his hip flexor muscle in the front of the hip. And right now he's stretching the left one. So I'm gonna have him hold this stretch about 30 seconds. And the further in you lean, the more you're gonna feel that stretch. So this is important if you felt like when we were doing that hip extension exercise, if you felt like you couldn't get your leg very far behind you without your back moving, then it might be that you have some stiffness at the hip. So this is a good exercise to do for that. Go ahead and switch sides, Brett. Good. So same thing, about 30 seconds here. Good, you can come out of that stretch. For the sake of time, we're gonna keep moving on to our other stretches, but that's a good one to do maybe 3 or 4 reps of for about 30 seconds each. Let's go ahead and move on. I'm gonna turn this chair around. Let's do the calf stretch. I call this one the runner's stretch. So for this one, it actually is important that the back heel is touching the floor. That's gonna make sure that he really feels that stretch in his calf. So he's gonna lean forward and hold it about 30 seconds here. And you wanna be really careful when you're stretching to not bounce in and out. You want a long stretch of that muscle tissue. You wanna hold it. Try not to bounce in and out of it. Good, so this is for his calf muscle. Now I want you to bend that knee, Brett. This is gonna get more towards the Achilles tendon, towards the ankle. So you have 2 calf muscles, one on the top and one underneath it, and this is getting the smaller muscle underneath. Good. Let's go ahead and switch sides. Same thing on the other side. Knee straight first, so you'll keep that heel down, keep the knee as straight as it'll go if you can. Just hold that. And then go ahead and bend the knee. So you should feel that lower down towards the ankle. Now, when you bend the knee, you may find that your foot wants to come up, your heel wants to come up off the floor. That's okay, as long as you're still feeling the stretch. When you bend the knee, sometimes if that muscle is really tight, it just pops that heel up off the ground. But try and keep it as much as you can on the ground. Good, and relax there. Okay, let's move on to a piriformis stretch. This was another new one we added last week. So you can do this one in the chair. This is a pretty easy one to do at the office or if you're at home. So he's just gonna cross one ankle onto the opposite knee, and he's gonna push that knee down. Now for some of you, this is plenty. Just pushing the knee down, you feel a good stretch in those hip muscles that we just worked out. That's perfectly fine, just hold it there. For those of you that don't feel too much of a stretch in this position, or you want to increase that stretch, lean forward a little bit with the trunk. You can even lean forward and a little bit towards the right. So his left foot is crossed over onto his right leg. And if he leans forward and a little bit to the right, he's going to feel it a little bit more. So same thing, we want to hold this about 30 seconds. So when we talked about pain earlier, I didn't mention SI joint pain, sacroiliac joint pain. That's a really common one with walking and running. It has to do with the rotation of the pelvis that may have occurred during a fall or a trip, or if you step off a curb really quickly, anything like that can kind of jolt the pelvis and cause a rotation. And a lot of times this is a great stretch for anyone who's having that SI joint pain, which is kind of right in the middle of the glute. Go ahead and switch sides, Brad. So same thing, just push that knee down. And if that's not enough of a stretch for you, you'll lean forward this time, forward and to the left. Good, and relax. All right, so last stretch today, let's do a hamstring stretch. So you can do it seated, Brett. Just kick one leg out straight, and you're gonna scoot towards the very edge of your chair. One leg will be out straight, and your foot will kind of be up towards you. Yeah, there we go. And what he's gonna do is keep that knee straight and lean on forward towards his foot. And he doesn't have to reach towards the toes necessarily. He just has to bend forward and he'll feel it pretty good. Now, if you have some sort of belt or a long towel at home, I'll just use this TheraBand for now so you can see. He can grab that and pull his toes towards him, and he's gonna get a little bit more of a calf stretch with that hamstring stretch, and then keep leaning forward. Yeah. So that's another way to get the calf as well. Yeah, so the other thing that he can do is pump that ankle up and down in this position. It's easiest to do if you have a sock on a wood or tile floor or something like that. But pumping that ankle up and down is he's gonna feel it even more so. This is really helpful if you have any sort of pain going down the leg, like a sciatic pain as well. We do these nerve glides a lot in the clinic, and that's gonna help with that. Good. All right, let's go ahead and switch sides. The same thing on this side. You want to keep the knee as straight as it'll go. Toes come back towards you, and you'll lean on forward. Good. So about 30 seconds here. And then go ahead and pump that ankle up and down, Brett. Very good. Good, and relax. All right, very good. Can you move that camera angle up? Very good. All right, that's all I have for you guys today. If you have any specific questions about pain that you may be having, feel free to email me. My email is kbond, B-O-N-D, @n3pt.com. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. So we have one more week of the walking tips class, so I hope you'll join me again next Tuesday.